You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo, bringing you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. Today, our special guest is Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder. You've had quite a week, to say the least. But
that's why we appreciate your time so much more. Certainly really a lot to discuss. We know there's a lot of important things that impact Long Island, and I know we've talked about some of them in the past, including diversity in the ranks of NCPD. So we'll hop into that, and obviously we'll talk about a lot of the other things. We know Belmont race is this week, and I know that's a big thing on the plate of NCPD. So we'll get to the nuts and bolts too. But of course, like Bill said, we want to talk about first the report that was released by Jim Bombach, who I know you spoke with for that piece, where they had found that over 6,500 African-American applicants to both NCPD and Suffolk County Police Departments in the past decade. Out of that pool, approximately only 67 were hired. And since then, there's been a lot of action, including a committee that was announced by Executive Curran. So I think we'll just start, with your thoughts on that. And I know there were also comments from law enforcement in those stories. Mets pitcher's father, Marcus Stroman from out in Suffolk. So just your overall thoughts on this week and where we've kind of come from that time that you did speak with again the reporter Jim Bombach.
So, first of all, thank you for having me, and I'll try to clarify as best I can so everybody understands. That interview was done 6 months ago, and Newsday sat on it for 6 months. And the night before it broke, they asked if I would like to clear up my comments, and I said, "Sure, you can. I'll talk to you." And then it turned into, well, we're bringing in a video camera. We're bringing in a second interview. Well, I get the idea what press is, and I'm not going after the press people here. But I need to have put clarity on what was done. We were talking about diversity. We're talking about hiring. We're talking about getting it better. I have one of the most diverse upper managements in the police department history. My chief of department is African-American. My chief of detectives is African-American woman. My chief of support is an African-American woman. I have high-ranking positions throughout the department, detectives and sergeants and supervisors that are there because of who they are and their ability, and nobody's been given a gift. They're hardworking individuals, and they're dedicated, they're loyal, and they're also compassionate and respectful. And that's why they're in that. So, but when you look, this is my environment. I control that environment somewhat on who I promote and who I move around. But when it comes to test taking, I don't control it. So I don't know, and in fairness to Jim, I don't know where the number 6,500 comes from. I know this, and I can tell you because I gave numbers that I had in the last exam. And again, my biggest mistake or error, or what I need to correct, was the choice of words by saying that maybe some of these kids that came from a broken home, there's no such thing. And listen, I've learned a lesson here, and I've learned it from people in my job that have spoken to me and outside people that have said, look, we understand what you meant, but it's not said that way. There's no such thing as a broken home. A home's not broken because mom and dad get divorced. And I agree with that. Single parents, children raised by single parents are usually successful. There's no, listen, is it difficult? Then it's always better to have two on your team than one, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't succeed and you can't go on. And I wasn't going that. I wasn't going that deep into it. I was asked, why do you think and I'll use rough numbers because I don't have it, like 2,600 African-Americans were recruited to take the last test. And on the day of the test, only 1,100 showed up. And again, I'm using round numbers because I don't have it in front of me, and I apologize. But it was more than half didn't show up. And I said, well, there's a lot of reasons why, and maybe this, and that's where I used that analogy. I have taken that word out of my vocabulary. I won't say that word no more. But I have also spoken to leaders in the Black community, the Black clergy, I've spoken to the Hispanic community, a lot of the Hispanic clergy. I've spoken to people in many different religions also, and have been given the support because of this. We give back to the county all the time, to our communities. There's nobody that has been more proactive with our communities in Nassau. And I say all my communities, not just the minority communities, all my communities than I have been in Nassau County. I used a choice of words that I shouldn't have used. I apologize for that. I said, look, I didn't mean to offend anybody. My apologies if I have. But at the same time, the intent behind the story was to help increase diversity, more inclusion, bring in a better police department, that reflects the community. I still don't have the answers, but I know I said it, I can control some things. And when I said I can control the kid, meaning this, I can help the kid. Not control is probably not the right word again.
Yeah, right.
I can help the kid. We started a mentoring program even before reform came into place, because I met with my guardians even before reform came into place. And it was their suggestion of a mentoring program. The Latino community, the Hispanic Association, the African American group, the Guardians, the LGBTQ community, all my fraternal organs in the police department came together. The Holy Name Society, Animal Society, the Stubens, all of them came together and said, look, we'll help with the mentoring program. Free. Okay. So you sign up to take the test. This is going forward, and I'll show you what we did going now. You show up to take the test. We're going to give you some information. You sign up. Hey, if you don't know how this test is or what you've ever seen in this test, call us and we'll mentor you. We'll help you through the process. We'll help you through the test taking process. We'll help you under the physical fitness part of the test. We'll help you with the academic and application process. And then we'll help you through the academy to make sure we don't lose good kids. And I don't want to lose good kids. I don't want someone that doesn't want to be a cop. I want someone that wants to be a cop, but I also someone that's good, high standards, moral standards. And again, not that we are above anybody, but we try to make sure that we can bring in the right person for the right job. It has nothing to do with race or religion or gender. But what we tried to do, and we have with the mentoring program, we've already started that process with those that were currently involved. I spoke, and I got to get the number. I know there are several already in with the Guardians being mentored. I know that the number is 24 that are already in with the Hispanic community, because I didn't get a chance to speak to the Guardians about their actual number, but there's 24. That's a lot of people already using something that can help in the process. And I have one kid that was rejected by civil service, and I'm pulling that file to see what we didn't do good enough to help that young man. Actually, it's a woman, to help that young woman. So the idea of that whole part of that conversation was about diversity and in helping and recruiting. And the way it played out, it actually hurts me now in recruiting. A lot of our recruitment is built on trust. If a story is out there that I'm biased or racist or whatever, that hurts the trust big time. But it's not, and I'm not. And I'm all about building that trust.
We know we've had those conversations with you in the past, and we know how much the new police academy on Nassau Community College's campus, hopes to play a role in that process with recruiting from the community, especially with people of color and communities of color. But to your point, I know that a member of the new committee, Bishop Harvey, I believe, from Westbury, he had basically made some comments in the press follow-up story. To your point, knowing that, again, that he assumed that you were doing some soul searching over the issue and that you felt sincerely, of course, sincerely understood the kind of misuse of those words, but the issue that you just raised, that there was concern of it kind of overshadowing a lot of those good programs that you just mentioned, the mentoring programs and all these other kind of inroads for community policing and things that we discussed in previous conversations about police reform. So certainly I think that is, one of the downsides of this story, which is good that they're getting more attention to focus on diversity. But I think sometimes, a lot of people saw that headline. I know that story was picked up and was, shown around the country, it seemed like, based on the headline, but hopefully people will do a deeper dive and they do see that it's not just about, kind of seeing the headline, but going deep and trying to make those policy changes that you do. And
many of the community leaders that reached out to me from our communities of color, We had great conversations. And they all said the same thing. Look, Pat, you probably could have used better wording. I got it. I totally get it. But they know what we've done. We've increased our pop offices in the community. We added bike patrols, and they reflect what the community looks like, so we can get that bonding built in there. We added PALs into communities like Elmont, Lawrence, and Roosevelt. With our community affairs is enhanced. We've been out there doing things like, believe it or not, the double Dutch jump rope contest that we're out there in the park. So we're out there doing that. But at the same time, we're brought in for the law and order side of things. And we also got to go out there doing the enforcement. And we just, in Roosevelt, we took down a drug dealer that a complaint came in that he was moved into a senior housing complex and he was dealing drug. He was of legal age to do that, but he was using it as a drug den and people coming and going. And it put all the people in that community in fear. We received it within a month. We had a search warrant. We went and we made the arrest and took them out of there. So, we do the enforcement side too. So there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of work that shows that we're working with our community and we're building trust. And Dr. Williams, to his big credit, took on that challenge to join this new team, along with Bishop Harvey and many other people from the community. And this is what we don't control. I don't control civil service testing, but I can help you prepare for the civil service test. Yeah,
that's an important point. And I think some people have raised the analogy to the specialized high schools and even colleges where, if you have access to that prep, to those kind of, Kaplan or whatever those kind of services are that get you kind of more familiarized with the SAT, for example, you have better chances statistically to do well on it. So it sounds like those types of mentor programs would, in a sense, kind of serve in that way. So, and I know you said too that one of the issues was there might not be the same community ties and families even to the law enforcement ranks. So is that kind of on that kind of?
And again, that was kind of taken out of context too. And I mean this sincerely. In the Irish culture, policing, that's when they came to this country, when nobody else would hire, and they wouldn't hire the Irish when they were immigrants here. That Bellingham, I have the sign on my wall: no Irish need apply.
Yeah.
The Irish went to the job that nobody else wanted. That's to be a police officer. And so in that culture, it goes from family to family to family. They go, my great grandfather was a cop. My grandfather, my uncle, my father, my brother.
Like military.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, like military. And again, I probably went way out of my bellywick and started speaking about things that I shouldn't be, but there are other cultures that you see. And I'll use Syosset as an example. We had an Asian crime up there and they were concerned, and we went up and we met. And someone said, what are you doing about diversity for the Asian community in the police department? And again, I look and I explain what I went through. And then I say, and I asked the audience, I said, I got to ask you, in today's culture, a culture of what policing is going through, not the culture of the ethnicity, but in today's culture, would you want your son or daughter to be a police officer? There's 150 people, not one raised their hand. So, and again, I'm pushing my sons towards law enforcement because I think it's a very honorable way to serve your community. And respectfully. And I was brought up in the civil service mentality to go into it. But I shouldn't have been saying that, it's not pushed hard enough in the African-American community. I don't belong in that world. I shouldn't be discussing it. But you start to think about your own thoughts and start rolling things out. What I should have said is, I am here to do whatever I can to bring diversity to the department. And if it means helping out any way I can within the community, I will. If I get into too many specifics of how I do that, that's where I get myself in trouble. That's not true. That's and it's sensitive to, especially in today's environment. It's very sensitive to all our different cultures about how things are discussed. But we're in a volatile place in this country, and it changes. It's fluid. It's changing every day. What you say, every word is people are hanging on. And again, for me in my position, I got to be aware of that. I got to make sure I don't want to offend anyone. That's not what I do. I'm here to help everyone. And
of course.
So we work to be done for sure.
Yeah. Well, like we always say, Commissioner, cooler heads need to prevail.
Yeah.
So, when you print one salacious story, of course, that's what gets all the attention, not the nuts and bolts work you've done, So, but I think that's great. The mentor program. Now, that's something that, we can even talk about on the air. And if people know about that, oh, you mean the police department wants to help me get a job there?
Yeah.
That's a different attitude and a different approach rather than us and them kind of thing.
So we have this early enrollment process. So we do recruitment all the time. It never goes away. And we do a lot of recruitment in the community, the minority communities to pull that diversity, right? Because again, in my community, there's cops are pushing the kids to be cops, right?
Right.
Doctors, lawyers, it's just a family business, right? And again, I'm very cautious saying that. I'm using an analogy, but that's the way I think. But at the same time, if we can find a way to give them assistance and help on it, because look, the kid may not know about the test. That's a big part of it too. So that's my job. That is my job to make sure I make everybody aware. That's part of recruitment. So this new group is going to look at recruitment as one of the three prongs that the county exec mentioned, but they're also going to look about the application process, the recruitment process, and the actual hiring process. So a lot of good things are going to come out of that group, and I think we can do some great work.
One of the things that I noticed with I think there were 3 phases of the test or whatever. The psychological test is actually done by a company in Georgia. Is that right?
So let me break this down for you. First, there's the recruitment. That's on the police department. So that is our responsibility to bring in. And by the way, the last test was one of the most diverse group of people in quantity that we've ever brought in that we registered to take the test. When they don't show up, that's another part. Again, why I don't know the answers to it. But there's recruitment. Then you go and you take the test, and there's no way to study for the test, but what you study for is what's called civil service test taking techniques. Absolutes you watch out for. When it says you will never, you almost never do anything, right? Yeah. So it's, if you don't know the answer clear, you will never steal. Well, yeah, I am never going to steal. That's a simple answer. But you will never do this, and you're like, if that's so you don't answer that way. There's those guesses that you have to take. And so there's the test that you take. And once you take the test, they certify the list. And the list gets certified by, and again, clarify something else. The list gets certified by your score. 100 for you, 99 for John, 98 for me. You're 1, 2, 3. But I served in the military. I get 5 points. So I jump ahead of you both now. And when I said there was obviously a larger scale of minorities in according to statistics in the military than there is of white people. And that's true. But in Nassau County, because we have a larger, higher population of whites in Nassau County, 64%, a lot more of them in quantity, not percentage to the demographics, but in quantity went to the military. So when they take the test, they come back and that's why you see such a large, our first couple of groups. You just saw the first 3 classes hired in Nassau County. And when they take that picture, it's like, it's all white military guys. And, and again, there are some African Americans, Hispanics, and so forth that also served in the military. But again, smaller percentage, 11%, 16, 17%. So then that messes, that's the way you see the test. You're going to see a difference in this next class. And the reason you're going to see a difference is because I'm out of the military numbers, meaning the 5-point. Okay. So now I'm into the test numbers. And what you also will see a difference is the grade. They're going to say, oh, you went to a lower grade. Does that mean they're not as smart? No, that has nothing to do with it. You answer one question wrong, and I answered it right. It's 1,000 people between us. 16,000 people took the test. So you turn around and the military part gets broken out. So now you're going to see that. That's out. That's out of our math now. So this is just the common guys, not the common, the people that were non-military. Right. And now you're going to see that. Then after you pass that test and they score you, we bring you in and for a physical. In the physical. And it's online, so everybody has the opportunity to go see it. But you know what? again, my kid, I said, hey, you got to make sure you straighten your arms when you go all the way up. You got to make sure you go all the way down. You got to touch that sponge that's going to be on the ground, up, down. And I tell them, you got to do this. You don't realize how your adrenaline takes over, and sometimes you make mistakes.
Yep.
Kid can't do a push-up thing. So why shouldn't all kids have the same opportunity? So that's part of our mentoring program. When you do the sit-ups, you got to do it a certain way. It's not the way you would normally think. It's actually the hardest way to do it, but probably not the best for your health. But it's the way you do it on a bench, and all the way down, all the way up, past your knees and so forth. And your fingers must stay locked behind your head. And you got to know the number. So preparing that, why shouldn't all the kids have the same advantage of somebody that has taken the test and knows the test? And then the last part is just the run. And look, you're in it or you're not in it. You're going to train for it or you're not going to train for it. When you get past the physical, and we lose a lot of kids in the physical, then you got to start the application process. And in the application process is the first is now we're back into the police department. Civil service did the test. I do the recruitment. Civil service does the test. Civil service scores it. They do the physical part. We assist them, but they run it. Now the application, we take the application. Here's your application. It's this thick. Fill it all in. A kid that may not know how to get certain documents looks for help. So let's go help them. The mentors do that, right? So now they go in. That's what we control. Then it goes back and it goes for psychological, and it goes for medical, and it goes for a polygraph. All except for the polygraph, we do the polygraph here at headquarters, but the medical and the psychological all get done again back at civil service. Then they hand it back to us for the poly and the final list. They give me the final list. They say, okay, here's the next 170 people on the list. You've got a hiring number at 170. Start calling them in to sign their letter for commitment. We reach out to them. When you reach out to them, all of a sudden the kid goes, you know what? I'm in the NYPD. I'm making $110,000. I can't take the cut to 37,000. Thank you very much, but I'm going to pass. So now 170 became 169. Since that time, you also come in for a drug test last minute. I messed up. I started doing drugs. Well, you got it. But so that number will whittle down pretty quick. Yeah. And then you go into 7 months of the academy.
Yeah.
And again, we don't want to lose a kid there. Look, if you came to me and said, and I had a kid. I had a kid that was in our Explorer program, right? I told him that he was preparing for the physical part. I said, it wasn't push-ups and sit-ups, it was the run. And I said to him, meet me at the track in Belmore at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. He shows up at 6:05. I got in my car and I drove away. He goes, where you going? I said, I sold you 6 o'clock. First part of being in the law enforcement is discipline. You got to be here. I drove away. I'll see you here tomorrow. Next morning, he was there 5:45. and then we ran that mile and a half, and he struggled. He couldn't do it in the time. I said, it's okay. You got 2 months to prepare for that run. Every other day, we're going to be here and we're going to run. He passed the test. He went on to be an NYPD cop, and then he's in there now. And I think eventually he's waiting for this list out here. But again, these things that we're doing to help kids. And I said it wrong. I should have never touched a thing called, I don't even say the word no more, broken home. Yeah. I don't want to say it. Right. Yes. And I learned that people told me, listen, I'm from a single parent home. I got this. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I go, you know what? You're 100% right. Yeah, I'm wrong. I shouldn't say it.
Yep. And it's a learning opportunity in a sense. And we know when we spoke with Jim Baumbach last week, and we know that, some of your, we'll say, charm is the fact that you do speak, like the common, kind of rank and file. You're not the technocrat. You're not the, kind of lost in too much jargon. You speak from the heart. And, sometimes, it can lead to these types of misunderstandings and issues. But
it goes too fast. It doesn't catch up.
Yeah, right.
That's relatable, though. I know we all, make those mistakes in lives, but it's about, building out of it, and like you said, learning a new lesson and being a little more, culturally sensitive and having the language that really kind of, elevates, the work that you're doing, and that, makes it tougher for yourself and for the other folks who are trying to build those bridges with community. So let's just remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, with Bill McIntyre, myself, Jon Gallo, and thankfully joined by Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder. So yeah, a lot there, a lot of important information, of course. And I know you were just speaking about the test. I know Bill had raised specifically the psych eval, the psych tech tests. But in terms of those physical test. And I guess I have a question about the polygraphs too, but are those standard practices, throughout multiple law enforcements, like statewide, in terms of like they all use the same standard for like push-ups and stuff like that? And if so, is that something that can be reevaluated? I know some people have called it potentially arbitrary. I don't really know enough about it.
It's definitely not arbitrary. The test, like I told you, my two boys, my daughter too, all took the test. And they came out and they're like, Dad, they asked these questions. And I'm like, you don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. But I guess the test taker who designed it knows what he's looking for, right? So that's the test part of it.
Yeah, I meant more the physical fitness side, I guess.
You get into the physical fitness part of it, it's not arbitrary. They tell you, and they show you on a video online. You got to go all the way up with your arm. You can't go like this, halfway down. You got to go all the way up, snap it out, and you got to come all the way down and touch it. That's a full push-up. Boom, boom, and whatever the number is now. I think it's 35.
Okay.
Or maybe 32, something like that. And then the sit-ups, the same thing. It's not arbitrary, and these standards come from the state, right? So the states, we don't decide what we're going to train on. We train above what the state asks, but we have to reach the state minimum. So civil service testing is exactly what the state civil service is saying. Okay,
that's what we were speaking with Jim about, and it made sense to get a little more clarity, because we all get the idea that we want officers, especially ones who are out in the field, to have a level of physical fitness, of course. But I know there were some concerns about where if you could do a push-up and it's not exact, and you're a great police officer and every other potential avenue, do we want to disqualify applicants because of that? But I know, like you're saying, that if you have opportunities to train people like the SATs, then
remember, in all testing, you have to have something that's going to disqualify people, because you can't have everybody have the job that you're going to have. And it can't be one thing, just the test. It's all the factors that come into play.
Of course. And then to that point, then what about the polygraph? Is that also state practice? And is that something, because I know we were talking with Bill and myself earlier, that I know there's always been debate about the, kind of credibility at times, and being permitted in courts and stuff like that. So what is kind of state practice?
We do not disqualify anybody that fails the poly. We bring it back in, and you have an opportunity to clarify why. When I ask you, so we'll go marijuana. Marijuana right now is legal, but in policing, it's not acceptable. You can't have a firearm.
Of course.
So before the law, because now it's gotten complicated, but before the law changed, when it was still illegal, if you smoked marijuana in college, we're okay. You're going to be fine. We'll accept you. But the day you take the police test is when you make that conscious decision to say, I want to be a cop. And if you want to be a cop, you got to do follow the law. So in between that, if you turn around and you say, I smoke weed, maybe 100 times. Well, we got a problem. So and you're going to get called in for drug testing and so forth. But if you answer the question, did you ever smoke marijuana, on the written part, you say no. And maybe you did. Maybe you did in college. You just said no. Now you come and you take the poly. They go, did you ever smoke marijuana? And you say no. And all of a sudden, whoop, it jumps up, right?
Yep.
The next thing, they're going to bring you back. Hey, you said you didn't smoke marijuana. And then you went in there and you said you didn't smoke marijuana. But the polygraph said, you smoked marijuana. You got to help me out. He goes, I tried it in college. Well, you didn't say that. The one thing that we can't have is somebody that's going to lie, because that is what we're all about, our credibility, right?
Definitely trust.
Right, that trust factor. And that's for the courts. We still work with kids, and they have an opportunity to clarify themselves, but nobody fails because of it. It just gives us a guide to come back and say, hey, it's easy. If I asked you, did you ever, assault a little girl? And you say, no, never. And then you go into poly and we got to bring you back in. You might not have been arrested for it, but you might be someone that is not a good moral character, is what they say. That's not my words. That's the letter they send out.
Yeah.
And which I don't agree with that word. I've had a couple of conversations with some bishops down in Hempstead, but they go, hey, it's one thing to deny the person, but to say you're not a good moral character.
Yeah, right.
Sounds a little old fashioned.
Yeah. And that standard does come from the state too, which that's what this committee is all looking at. That's exactly what the county executive committee she formed is looking at, the testing, the what we go through in the process and what we can do better on.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good thing to transition to. Bill, I know you had some questions about specifically the committee and, kind of how this one might be a little different than some of the other ones. So, Bill, go ahead.
Well, yeah. In all the discussions, I know that I guess the progressives, you could call them, but they're harping on that idea of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And I mean, it's fairly obvious. The Nassau Police Department and Suffolk County Police Department don't want any part of that. If that number is correct, the 6,500 or whatever, they attracted quite a few candidates. I think this is a good idea, but I don't know that I don't know if it's, is it going to just make people happy that there is a commission now? That can be one of the first knee-jerk reactions that any municipality will do. Let's form a commission, and it gets everybody to sit back for a little while. Now, but the proof will be in the pudding. And like you say, all the work that you've done for the diversity, and hopefully we're going to see the fruit of that in just short time.
So the committee has a very specific mission. Their mission is to improve on what the diversity of the police department, how we can improve it. So is there ways that you look at we've been in a consent decree for 40 years.
Yeah.
40 years. And my numbers haven't improved. And again, we don't make the test up. Some private company does. And we end up with that issue. So there's the first issue. How can we make that better? When I give you the test, it's every 5 years or every 4.5 years, and it takes a year to grade. We try to cycle out every 5 years.
Okay.
I give you the test when you're 18. You don't do well. And you answer 2 questions less than me, and you're out of it, right? So you don't do well on the test. It's 5 years before you see it again. You're 23. You got a job working for PSE&G, and you're making $90,000. I can't go back now. So you're gonna turn off from that. So we lose a lot. The state exam is every 2 to 3 years. It's more frequent, but they're also in a consent decree. So they have their standards have to be approved, like my standards have to be approved. The only difference is I'll get to take it more often. So that's something the committee's going to look at. Say, will that help in diversity? I don't know if it helps, and I'm going to tell you why. Because again, I'll cycle through military guys again. In the first 2 or 3 classes, now I don't hire that many people to begin with. I'm not like the city of New York. So if I'm cycling out every 2.5 years, now I'm dropping the kid with the highest score I didn't get down to. I didn't get down to a 92. So and again, military kids. So is there an advantage or a way to fix this? I don't know. We got to look at that. That's what they're going to do. All of the other aspects that I spoke to you about before, they're going to look at that. And you heard Bishop Harvey say that. Mm-hmm. We've already seen a good improvement with the mentoring program, but there's much more we can do.
Of course. And just to clarify, down the executive, she did announce that committee, right? The recommendations are expected to be made and finalized before the class of 2022, correct? Is that our understanding?
The next test, right.
Or the next test, rather. Okay, that is administered. That makes sense. Yeah. Certainly, I know we've had this conversation before, and I know, I think it was a year or so in between when we came back from the pandemic, we spoke with you, and, we know that you want that increased diversity in the ranks. You know that it helps serve the community. It helps build that trust. But, for whatever reason, under multiple administrations, both parties, there still has been a very slow, gradual, again, increase, but kind of at a pace that's certainly people want to see, be quickened. So in terms of that committee too, I know there were some other folks who again are community activists and certainly, have been fighting this battle for police reform and other things for a little while. So you're familiar, I imagine, with all of them? Have they had, previous conversations, with NCPD in some formal capacity, or are they all folks who are a little bit newer, or it seems like they were mostly people who were established in the community for a while?
The most of the 10 people you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I know most of them, all good people in their communities, advocates for the community. That's what's important. They're giving a voice to their community in the process. So, Bishop Harvey's Westbury, Martha Kreisel, she's there because she's the head of civil service. So she's not really in that process part.
There is one officer too, correct? I believe.
Yep. And Officer Williams, he's African-American. He's in our community affairs office. And the reason he's there and not a supervisory rank is because we said, look, I want a boots on the ground guy. He's fairly new on the job, 5-6 years. great kid. And, listen, he's passionate about his community and wants to make sure we can do better in hiring. He's got some great ideas already, but I'm going to let him take that with the committee and come up with it. But it's my responsibility, no matter which way it gets sliced out. I still got to do the recruitment, and he's going to be one of my recruiting officers because he's in community affairs. He's also one of my bike cops in Roosevelt. So he speaks to the community every day, and these kids will say, hey, if you didn't do this on the test, hey, there's something you can bring back.
You know what? It reminds me of when you're talking about beat cops and stuff. And one of the best experiences I ever had, my daughter was, I don't know, maybe 2 years old. And I used to put her on the back of my bicycle in one of those things with the helmet on, the whole bit. And we went on the trail. And one morning we were down there, and what did we run into? But a Nassau County cop on horseback.
Yep.
And she got to pet the horse's face.
Our horses are always in the mall, and it's a great public relations tool. It's also a great crowd control, and that's the height over the cars. But what I also said was, hey, guys, I need you to go into the Massapequa Preserve. I need you to go into the Hempstead Lake Park. I need you to go down by Valley Stream in their park, up on the North Shore, and let the people see the real cop, the human side of the cop. Stop, say hello, let them pet the horse. Years ago, it was like, don't ever put anybody on the horse. Pick them up. Let the mother pick them up, put them on the side of the horse, take a picture, and to take them right off. Don't let them on the horse and let them walk away with the horse.
Yeah, right.
but for that kid, it's a lifetime dream. So we build our future on our foundation, and that's why we're so structured towards double Dutch. It was cool. We were out before the story broke. That Tuesday, Wednesday, I was in Elmont. Right, we brought our open house got canceled here, so we brought it to the schools that really use it and can and have a need for it. So it was Elmont, Westbury, Uniondale, Roosevelt, and Oceanside was also in there. And we went to these schools. We gave out frisbees and things. We had the horses coming and the motorcycles and the cops. That's community outreach. Them kids are going to grow up remembering, like your daughter may remember, them horses, and that's building my trust. I'm at this level, I'm at this level, and I'm at this level. I'm moving a million different ways at a million different times during the day, but we're trying to do what we can to reach out to everybody.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it works, but she's in her 30s now, and we still talk about that event.
Horses are still there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The stables in Eisenhower Park. I know anyone taking a stroll over there by the lake. Always a nice thing to check out when you see the horses out enjoying some sunshine. But yeah, no, that's a lot of important things that we've just discussed. Let's remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News, 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. Bill McIntyre, myself, Jon Gallo, and still joined, thankfully, by Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder. Bill, I know you had
well, I got one more, and this is something that it was a news story, and we're talking about the body cameras now. And I know it irks a lot of people that apparently a cop that wears a body camera is going to get an extra $3,000. And initially, it appeared as though that was a one-time payment, but now we find out that's going to be every year. How do you feel about that?
Well, look, I don't get it. But
right.
Unions, collective bargaining agreements are done all over the country. Unions,
of course,
all over the country. And they have the same rights to protect their members. I want to make sure we protect our members. The county exec announced early on, we're going to body cams come September. And no matter what, we're going to body cams come September. And it's happened. We have bought the company now, not bought the company, we bought the product in process. And we had 2 meetings last week. We'll have another one next week. We're writing up policies and procedures, which isn't hard to do. We're just looking to New York City. If they've done and tested it, it's a good place to start with. But they have their rights as well as the community has the right. They negotiated a number, when they do raises and pieces, every raise is sliced. You got to be accountable why they got what they got. So do I think it's the greatest way to tell the public that we're going to body cameras and we're going to pay our cops? No, I don't think it's the greatest way to sell that product to the community. But at the same time, they have that right. It's a collective bargaining agreement. And unions have, remember, if you go back to the history of union was to protect the rights of workers that were abused. So there's got to be a balance. just like reform, just like recruitment. There's got to be a balance here. Our whole world right now needs some kind of balance. We can't be going off this way and off that way and smacking everybody in between. We got to find a balance.
Of course. And to that point, I know that a number of officers I know I've spoken to, even anecdotally, some of them see the benefit of directly of wearing the camera, because sometimes it can provide, obviously, protection of, self having that record, but also of litigation, and claims, that of types of misabuse of force. That could be, again, something that both helps the person who is bringing up the complaint and find it credible, or, vice versa, prove that it's an uncredible, kind of complaint. So,
two of the biggest changes in law enforcement in my time that I have seen that has worked, three of the biggest things: tasers, because of de-escalation.
Yep.
License plate readers, it's one of the greatest tools of an investigator, and it can't be abused because there's nothing, you can't just randomly search stuff, Yeah, but investigative wise, it's a great tool for us. So there's no abuse civil rights wise and stuff. The third one is going to be body cameras. And here's why. You may not like it, but I know that camera's on. And our guys turn it on when you leave the car, turn it off when you come back in the car. It's got to stay on. Yeah. And when you walk out and you approach that person, I know I'm wearing a camera. So I'm bringing it down already. Even if the guy took me on a ride, driving like a lunatic till I pulled him over, I'm bringing it down because I know I'm on the camera. And I have to tell him he's being videotaped. It's going to bring him down. So
good point.
If there's a real bad cop or there's a real bad guy, they're gonna go above that camera. They're gonna start. They don't care the camera's on.
Right.
That's a problem, and then we'll start to see those problems. I think it protects us. I think it de-escalates, and I think it'll bring us out of frivolous lawsuits and complaints that I spend a lot of time on doing. Go to the videotape. Right. The tape don't lie.
That's an important point. And, just one thing, off of that, I know we haven't had a chance to discuss it in the past, but, related to the conversation of reform, Bill and I have spoken about, with a number of folks, the conversation around qualified immunity. I know that's a bit of a hot button issue, but I know it's also framed in the kind of way that also civil servants, like elected officials, that if they are found guilty of charges, why should their voters, why should the constituents pay for their legal services if there is an accusation? Could you maybe just give your thoughts on obviously calls for that policy change, maybe at the county level as well?
There's qualified immunity and there's indemnification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
In New York City, the indemnification process is still in place. Qualified immunity is gone. Qualified immunity, and I used this case to someone earlier today, that's the Abner Lewinma case. Remember that officer took him into the bathroom and abused him.
Yeah.
The people of New York City should not have to pay that lawsuit. That cop went way beyond his scope of his employment. And
George Floyd.
Right. So again, George Floyd, right? So, and when you but now I get in a situation with you and you go to pull something out real quick and I think it's a gun and I fire and shoot you. And it ends up being, I don't know, whatever, a water pistol. And I shoot you. Listen, technically, and on a technical, legal standpoint, I shouldn't say technical, the legal side of it, I'm justified, from what it's, the way it goes in the perfect scenario that I'm showing you, right?
Yep.
But on the other side of it, I violated your Fourth Amendment right because I took your life, right? It's an unlawful seizure of your person, and you have a right to sue. The county, the city, should indemnify and should, if there was qualified immunity, pay that lawsuit. I shouldn't be sued for that. But again, I gave two extreme examples, and I hope people don't jump to conclusions of what I'm saying. But
of course,
it's those type of things. It's like, hey, you know what? You're a knucklehead. You go ahead, go to jail. You get sued. Take your house. You should have done what you did in that bathroom. Over here, cop's doing his job. It's a difficult job, and I think you guys saw it a couple weeks ago when we did it in Valley Stream. That guy pulled the gun. He whipped it out at my cops, and it broke. It came out like it bent. And the cop, taking cover, doing his training, didn't fire, and then realized it's a pellet gun. But when I showed it at the media, I said, show me which one is real and which one is fake.
Yeah, it's tough to tell. The airsoft guns.
And that guy was suffering through a mental health crisis. So it could have been the worst scenario. Turned out to be the best scenario because of good training, well-disciplined police officers.
Yeah, that's important. And like you said, I think, always the case by case and, seeing those more egregious incidents like the George Floyd one and I'm going to butcher that name. Yep, exactly. There we go. The point is that certainly, maybe those things could even be addressed after the fact when you find, like in the case of the former officer Chauvin, where he's not any longer a police officer, maybe there's a way to go after the estate, kind of in that sense and not have it come back, or have maybe the county and the PDs, kind of be reimbursed in a sense. So that's something that's interesting. We'll discuss more with the legislators that we do speak with, in terms of maybe finding a middle ground somewhere that serves, both parties. I know we don't have much time left here. We still got a little bit left though, thankfully. So just in terms of some of the other things, I know that in terms of officer safety, there had been, I think, a number of bills at the county level, I believe in the legislature, that I think were announced by the legislator Josh Lazafan's office in terms of protecting officers. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about that?
So there was two bills that he pushed forward. The first is I think it's called Blue Alert. It's the same as the Amber Alert. We had the Stop and Shop shooting a couple of weeks ago.
Of course.
A month ago. And immediately, my biggest, when I'm there, and I hate doing this to my press guy, to my investigators, he said, you got a name and you got a face, I need to put it out now. And they're working the case. Their mind is this, catch them and solve it. My mind is I got to alert the public. I have to. Right? You can't hold information back. And we know that. And we have a great relationship to make sure that happens. So we get that out. And then someone says, hey, I just saw him walk into 100 terrorists, and we put pieces together. We make the arrest within 2 hours. The world's a better place that he's now arrested. That's the scenario of an Amber Alert. Say he was the cop shooter. The Amber Alert will alert everybody by your phone and say, hey, we got a guy just shot a cop in here. So we would do it anyhow. If you were shot, John, and somebody was running away, we're going to tell the world, hey, we're looking for Pat Ryder. He just shot this guy. Mm-hmm. You do that. But in the Amber Alert, it gives us a little bit more authority to go and blast it on your phone. So you're going to get it. And people say, well, you're doing more for the cops than you would for the civilians. No, if you're brave enough to shoot a police officer, you'll shoot anybody. And if you're in that cat and mouse game, but now you're on the run for just shooting a police officer, you don't care who's in your way. You're going to shoot someone.
You're definitely a danger to society.
And it's getting the information out quicker and in different paths like an Amber Alert. The second one was protest. And it's similar. The law is similar to Governor DeSantis' law down in Florida. And it's when you have protests and those that attack police officers because of their uniform and stuff, there's an additional type charge that would go against them. If you cause the protest to happen and you're running it and you cause the riot, even though you don't cause the assault, there's ways that additional charges to go after you. And
interesting.
Look, and that's one that it's going to be difficult. It's we in law enforcement appreciate the fact that he's looking out for us, going above and beyond. But the truth is, in the bills, both bills, they're kind of there already. It's more of a, I don't want to say the word ceremonial, but it is more saying, hey, we're going to up the game just a little bit to protect our cops, which is nice in the current environment. And again, we're not without sin. We've made mistakes in this country in law enforcement, but we are there to protect and serve the public. And, we put our lives on the line every day to protect and serve without hesitation. Nobody hesitated running into the buildings on 9/11. Not a fireman, not a cop, not nurses and doctors during the pandemic. None of us hesitated. We did our jobs. And let me tell you, there was some rough moments out there, and you saw that's like suicides on the rise. Death to police officers are on the rise. Assaults on police are through the roof right now.
Yep. There was an incident. It was a little while ago, and I'm sure you'll remember it as soon as I tell you. It was in Brooklyn. Two cops walking on the street, and somebody doused them with water. And John and I discussed this on the air a couple of times, and it still gets me. As far as I was concerned, the cops were doused with water. That was assault. That's how I saw it.
The concern is what it could be. It could be bleach. It could be a bunch of things, of course.
Oh, it could have been anything. But even if we know it's water, that's still assault. I mean, look, we all learned it in kindergarten. You make a mess, you clean it up. Keep your hands to yourself. That's the big one.
Sometimes the simple things.
That was assault. But we had lawmakers coming out saying, oh, we need a law to, and I'm thinking, well, why don't you just enforce the law you got, which is those two cops were assaulted by the idiot with the bucket of water.
Every time something breaks, we start a new program.
Yeah.
How about just fix what's broken?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although
fair.
And I'll say this to you as just reading news and stuff like that, people keep, using that term that we're a country of laws. And my answer to that is when I see somebody on Wall Street stand in front of a judge for the 2008 that they admitted criminal activity, they admitted doing, not one of those guys has stood in front of a judge. Yeah. So when I see that, then I will unequivocally agree with your statement. They were a country of laws. But until that happens,
You bring a very good, I just left a cyber, that's why I was late, cryptocurrency training on Bitcoin.
Oh boy.
And when you look at banking, we're centralized and we have rules and regulations. When you go into the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, it's decentralized. There are no rules.
The Wild West.
What the blockchain wants to talk about and agree on.
Encrypted.
So, yeah, and what you're looking at is anarchy that is the same as when people don't want to follow any laws. We have to have laws, but everybody should be treated fairly. And again, this goes back to the same with our communities. They should all be treated fairly. We shouldn't go and target a community because, hey, there's more crime in there, so we should go pick on everybody in that community. Hold on. It's 90% of crime is done by 10% of the population.
Right.
Intelligence-led policing focuses on the bad people. The good people are here to help us get the bad people.
Exactly. Not the broad brushes, but like you said, that very targeted approach, certainly I think is what everyone is in favor of. We said, we just have a few more moments left and we did want to touch on some other quick issues.
Is there anything you want to tell everybody, Commissioner, anything you want to say?
I had a rough week, but know what? But as one Reverend Sally said to me down in West Hempstead, he goes, I'm sure you're pondering your thoughts over what you said. I said, absolutely. And I wish I could take it back. I can't. It said it. It was nobody else's fault but mine.
Honestly, I get the same thing because I'm older than you. And I use, some descriptive words or the way that I'll use language, and somebody will say, oh, you can't say that today. I said, well, I've been saying it for 60 years. How come I can't say it today? Well, I don't think you were making a judgment. I think that you made a statement that gave us a picture of some of the families that you were talking. That's all.
I've 38 years in law enforcement. I've been dealing with the minority communities on a good way. I've mentored kids from the school. I mentor a kid today that I locked up his father, and I took his mother to the hospital for overdose. That kid called me again today. And he's like, do you want me to go out in front and speak to it? I go, no. I want it just to die down. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. That wording is wrong. There's not broken homes.
And I think the point, is that we all are imperfect and we could have blind spots and we could all do better. And, like I said, this is a learning opportunity and it's not a thing to get defensive about and to necessarily, double down. Everyone who's criticizing is completely wrong, but to say, okay, I see what can be done better.
What hurt me was because when people said that I'm unfit to serve and I should step down, and that comes from, I'm in those communities. And my actions speak a hell of a lot bigger than my words. And I'm down, and that's why the communities are calling me saying, we don't believe that. We're standing with you because we know what you've done for our communities. So we move on.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, well, and good for you. And keep doing what you're doing.
And there's still plenty of nuts and bolts policing, obviously other issues. I know that we've talked, and thankfully we're transitioning away from the OEM kind of COVID response from law enforcement, and things are getting better on that front. We've talked about the vaccination rates, countywide and also within law enforcement. But in terms of some other things, I wanted to get your thoughts maybe real quickly. There's a couple of state laws that might make their way to the governor in terms of gun control. There's a number of things. And we'll have to have a long conversation about, the marijuana law that did pass. I know you said you were a betting man and, that and sports gambling seemed to be, the new law of the land. But in terms of those gun control laws, how do you see it from law enforcement? One I know was regarding ghost guns, and then one I think was about the actual producers of the guns and their kind of legal responsibility, to my understanding.
So look, the producers of any product should have some responsibility when they create something, right? There should always be, We're holding now those who created oxycodone. We're holding them accountable because, look, you created something that is dangerous.
Purdue Pharma.
What it said it was meant to do. On the other side, when it comes to gun control, I'm a Second Amendment guy. I'm a cop. I believe that people have the right to defend themselves. But I am also one that believes in gun control, gun background checks, slowing the process down, because I also see the bad business of when guns get in the wrong hands of people. It's like drugs. It's like marijuana being legal. You're never going to stop the illegal trade. Bad guys will always get guns. They will. There's a way to get it. That you're not stopping the production of guns. We tried that with alcohol and prohibition. It didn't work. We've been battling drugs forever. We know it's bad. We've given in on marijuana, said, okay, let's see how we can work this. All of it still has the bad side of the business. And, I believe that some of these laws are good. And I've met with many of the advocates that say, oh, no guns. It's never going to happen. It's like saying there's going to be no police. You can't, because there are bad people that will take advantage. But I believe in the gun controls, in the fact of time, backgrounds, stuff like that, slowing it down. I don't believe in saying that you shouldn't have, nobody should have. I'm not a big assault rifle guy, but again, ghost guns. No, there should be no such thing as a ghost gun because it has no serial number. It's harder for me now to track the shooter that shoots multiple guns. When we get a gun, we do it through our E-Trace system. We're able to go back and find that gun was involved in 3 shootings because of the spiral when the bullet comes out of the weapon. So,
exactly.
So that's how we solve these cases. You take away serial numbers and make these ghost guns so much harder.
Yeah, and then that was a bill I think sponsored in the Senate by Senator Anna Kaplan. I believe it was also named after a Long Island resident who was killed, if I'm not mistaken, in the Parkland shooting. I believe the Bagel Act. So if anyone wants to look into that more specifically, I believe again it has passed the Senate, and I believe it's expected to pass the Assembly, and we'll see what happens after that. But it's good to get your take on it because we know that certainly we don't want to see things like that, which make it harder to track down suspects in these terrible incidents, especially seeing what happened at West Hempstead. So thank you so much as always.
Well, Commissioner, we ate the better part of an hour here. That was pretty easy. I mean, we could have another 4 hours to go. So
I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to get on. And you guys reached out to me, for the record out there. I didn't reach out to you to push it, but when I'm okay with clearing what I said and at the same time taking responsibility for what I said. I know bad choice of words. My intentions were not there, and I think most people know that. So,
well, I think most people that know your intent took it exactly how you meant it, not negatively.
We'll get better.
Yeah,
exactly.
We got a new class coming in on June 18th at our new police academy on the grounds of the college with Dr. Williams, partnered up with us about helping to build diversity. Watch the numbers on that date. I won't say no more. Just watch the numbers on that date.
Very cool.
We look forward to talking with you.
Promise to come back too, like we always ask. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Well,
all righty, Bill.
John, the clock on the wall says we're probably already out of time. In any event, we'd like to thank Commissioner Patrick Ryder from the Nassau County Police Department for joining us for a solid hour and giving us some good stuff.
And for any more information about this interview or the other reporting based on it, please go look at TWLI News for all that content.
We'll see you next time right here on 90.3 WHPC.